Hello folks, it's Soul with another video, and today we're going to take a look at the trading post and see how it's doing. I went through and set up a sheet detailing all the items in the trading post over the past 23 months. We're going to identify trends and give feedback in hopes the trading post will improve even more in the future. If nothing else, you'll be able to come away with like a couple of talking points, and a copy of this sheet is available for you to download or butcher or make it your own, whatever. Just hit the link in the video description for that. Now, of course, you can always support the channel by liking this video, subscribing for more WoW coverage, and catching me whenever I'm live. As you probably know, the trading post is a cosmetic shop that rewards players for doing most activities in game, whether you're a seasoned raider or a delver, if you're a dungeon person, a PvP, or a pet battle, or a holiday enthusiast, and of course everything else in between. The main reason for me writing this piece is the recent announcement from Blizzard that's stating this coming February, the income of traders tender, that's the stuff used to buy trading post goodies, it's going to go up to $1,500 per month, up from $1,000 as it is right now. And it's not hard to see why. The very nature of the trading post is to overwhelm us with things to collect, but also make it impossible to fully buy up everything. According to the sheet, when we add it all up, it's going to cost 130,000 tender to buy everything that's appeared in the trading post since it started, up until now, and we've only earned like a fraction of that tender needed between, regular play and opportunities to get bonus tender from special promotions and prizes or whatever. It's been frustrating for speed completionists, but it's clear Blizzard has some rules set up for the sake of making the trading post, sustainable over the long term. I don't think we're ever going to see a point where we'll have enough tender to buy everything, or that we'll ever have a situation where the 1,000 or the 1,500 tender we get in a month will let us buy all the new items featured that month. Although, I think I should rephrase what I mean by these rules. Like, we'll never reach 100% completion with the trading post, ever. It's a different question of if we can manage to buy everything we like, right? But we shouldn't ever have so much tender that a new trading post month will come along and we'll be able to just pick everything up without a second thought. It wouldn't even be a question of choice, it's just we get all of it. The other rule, in a given month, even with a bunch of repeat items, the new items that do appear up in this section, they should always have a total tender cost higher than what we can get in that month. I'm kind of saying the same thing, but well, I hope that makes sense. That said, let's take a look at how these costs have looked during this second year. For clarity on this chart, I had to count the number of months since the launch of the trading post back in February of 2023. So 2024 actually starts here on the 13 mark. Sorry if it's kind of confusing. As you can see, the amount of items and the amount of total tender needed to buy everything up has increased by quite a bit since the very first few months of the trading post. It's easy to conclude costs are going up and that sense of completion is that much further away. There are two things to consider here. A conclusion like that assumes every player wants everything that comes to the trading post every month, but that's not everyone. Some of us are picky, and there's no shortage of commenters who are proud to have amassed like tens of thousands of tender in the hopes saving is gonna pay off. But it's more likely that they just don't see anything worth buying. And there's plenty of commenters echoing the same thing. All of this is very normal player behavior. I've observed lots of reactions when posting previews of the upcoming month, and I ask folks, hey, are you gonna save or are you gonna spend? It's not surprising to see a very even spread of people who might be excited about a certain thing, while others find it almost insulting that it's available. So the sum of cost header that's up here, that's technically a lot of stuff to buy, but there's a hidden column for folks called, something like sum of cost for things we actually give a damn about, and we're gonna be all over the place for that. Another way to look at this column is for brand new players with their 1,000 or their 1,500 tender in hand, all bright-eyed and distressed over the many different things they can buy, but only so much they can spend. Now, to be fair, I question how much a brand new player is going to really care about their freebies in the trading post when they're likely to have more immediate interests like, leveling and figuring out what kind of class or spec they want to play. Meanwhile, of course, veterans like us are seeing both these new items and repeats of previous previous items we've either bought before, or we're waiting to see cycle back, or to still not care about. Here on screen is a different column where I removed the cost of these repeat items, and now you're looking at the cost of only items making their first appearance in the trading post. It doesn't mean much because, again, what we perceive as desirable items is different for everyone, but it takes a bit of a bite out of some otherwise intimidating numbers. Some might remember November, that was just last month. It brought back a lot of specific ensembles and arsenals from the previous year. The sheer number of items is considerable, but otherwise that month introduced the fewest new items of any month since the trading post started. Using the spreadsheet, I'm able to play with filters and point out a few neat bits of trivia. I'm going to go through what I found. The cost of toys has mostly been stable, the most expensive toy of them all being the Ethereal Transmogrifier, which had one repeat month. This one's special because it spawns a transmog NPC both outdoors and inside instances, for people who want to clean up their mog after earning a piece of gear. The notable toy of the year, though, it's been the many colors of parasols made available. Boots debuted this year with this Cowlwack style kind of shoe. It comes in several varieties so far. Other shoe models popped in using the same style as the Trial of Style boots from a while back. Outside of mounts and ensembles, the single most expensive item introduced this year was the Deep Sea Treasure Pack, which features a lot of extra details and animations. Pets are basically cheaper than they were last year. Back then, costs ranged from 600 to 750 tender, and this year they dropped down from 250 to 500. Weapons are also cheaper, and also there haven't been any appearances I'd say are like, super outstanding or unique when we consider the Fury of the Firelord, which went for a whopping 750 tender. Not to say the appearances have sucked, we've got recolors of the Plunderlord appearances, and some uniques like the Candied Blade, the Cheerbringer XL, and the Water Blaster. There are plenty of cool mounts, of course, but the ones that stood out the most this year would include the Pearlescent Goblin Wave Shredder and the Friendship Fox, along with its variants. But it's the Blazing Hippogriff and Underlight Corrupted Behemoth that make for the most expensive mounts this year at 800 tender a pop. Obviously, most items that have come to the trading post have only been seen once. We should kind of feel bad for one-timers like the Bandoliers or the Fell Armor recolors. Meanwhile, the 3-Peak Club is growing, with 9 items we've seen 3 times in the past 2 years, but as of now, we haven't seen any item make a 4th appearance. There are other neat little things to point out when we pour through all this data. Feel free to point out or make corrections because it's a lot of information to try and get right. But now I want to talk about the trading post's future. Player housing is still a year away, but we can count on housing items to eventually appear on the trading post, or maybe shortly after it's available, maybe immediately after it launches. And we know Blizzard, with new cosmetics, there's no question they're going to add some sort of housing stuff to the in-game shop, or the trading post, or like a Twitch drop, whatever. We also know ourselves, and we're going to try our best maybe to save up tender to make sure whenever housing items do become available, we're going to pick all that stuff up. I predict the initial splash of player housing items won't be as big as we think though. Housing is expanding on customization in a way we don't quite know yet, but it goes beyond the transmog slots and the pets and the mounts and the toys. Even with the increased tender we're getting, I don't think they're going to give players too hard of a choice between, hey, I want a mount versus a transmog versus a fireplace or something. I'm counting on housing to be treated like everything else in WoW in the end, where it's like, 95% earned through gameplay and 5% through the trading post or the cash shop or whatever. Of course, I'm going to save a bit too, thanks to this extra tender, and I'm going to keep my eye open for data mining in the months ahead. But we should also talk about what's kind of a growing problem, if you could even call it that, considering the trading post is just a cosmetic loot pinata. It's cool we're going to get another 500 tender, which does add up. It's going to give us a bit more flexibility to both spend and save in anticipation for a really crazy month. But it doesn't change the trading post's what I think is the trading post's biggest issue. Previously released items just aren't circulating fast enough. It kind of sucks when we missed out on something we wanted and we didn't freeze it, only to not see it for like nearly 2 years. As the full catalog of the trading post gets bigger and bigger, it's going to take that much more time for items to rotate in unless they increase the size of the returning items, which is, a suggestion I'd make. Meanwhile, like I mentioned earlier, some items have appeared 3 times already. Now, I know there are concerns over the amount of tender that we earn, and there's there's good conversation to be had over getting so many recolors while unique items are few and far between, something quality versus quantity. But the availability of items rotating in and out, it's going to keep getting worse, hence why I call it this growing problem. There are thoughts circulating on how to resolve this. Maybe Blizzard has something planned and they're going to talk about it early next year, and it's going to come this coming February or something, but why wait until then to talk about it, right? Feel free to share your own ideas, but of course, I'm going to go first. My favorite idea is to eventually have something like a trading post warehouse. Now, when items are added to this warehouse, they just sit there. They no longer rotate in or out, they're just there all the time. There are probably going to be conditions for items to be moved into this warehouse area, like maybe they've rotated in a number of times, like the repeats that we've already seen. Another separate condition could be when maybe all the recolors of a certain thing have appeared, like, the series of cloaks and boots and sashes that we've seen. Once we see all of them, we maybe wait a while and then all of them get thrown into this warehouse. Another possible condition, like maybe after it's been a number of years since it debuted, no matter how long it's, no matter how many times it's been repeated, it just gets added in. Now, left alone, I think that idea or those series of ideas works out great, but another thought comes to mind because of this whole warehouse vibe. Like, what if these warehouse items happened to sell at a discount on top of it? Now, that's a dangerous idea. I want to talk about it, but it's a dangerous idea because the first thought in my head is to just wait it out and only buy items when they appear in the warehouse. My patience would be rewarded, right? And after what, like so many years after the early adopters got, that appearance or that mount, dude, just why not let me have it after the shine's worn off? I feel like the biggest thing against that particular idea or thought is that it would shift certain player behavior to be extremely conservative. Like, for certain players, and maybe a lot of players, the quote, right thing to do would be to not participate in the trading post until items started appearing in the warehouse and only there, and maybe every now and then spend on the trading post when maybe we'll have this large excess. And I don't know, that sort of takes away the joy and surprise of what's new in the trading post. For now, at least, I feel it's enough to feel comforted when items are moved to this warehouse that, hey, cool, I just need to save up tender and I don't have to worry about it leaving again. It takes away that feeling of missing out. Of course, it introduces this feeling of growing helplessness when I start seeing this growing catalog, this growing library of stuff that I want, and there's not enough tender, but I think that is a later problem. I think it would do us and Blizzard a favor if they were to at least reassure us about, their plans, about the circulation of these trading post items as this library gets larger and larger. Like, how are they going to handle it? I hope to learn more soon, and that is it. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.